Okay, all right, everyone, thank you so much for coming out tonight. The Center for Career Development is extremely pleased to have a part of our workplace readiness conversation. We are thrilled to have joining us a former EU colleague, Joanna Craig, who is now at Penn and is going to be bringing us some of her wisdom about what it's like to transition from college into the workplace. We know that obviously this is a very different year and very different transition process that many of you are going through. So we're really hoping the session can be informational, conversational, and really just a space where you can feel comfortable to ask your questions, learn, and just feel encouraged since everybody's going to be going through something pretty similar. So in case you don't know me, I'm Sarah Todd. I'm the director of the Center for Career Development. And Kristen, I'll let you introduce yourself too.
Yeah, I'm Kristen. I'm the Assistant Director for the Center for Career Development. And I'll echo what Sarah said. We're glad to have you join us and hope that this can be a beneficial time for you as you look to your future.
And just to say, Joanna was a joy to have as a colleague, and I consider her a dear friend. So it's very exciting to have her back in the Eastern community for an evening. So we will let you take it away.
Yeah,
Welcome, Joanna.
thank you. Thank you, Sarah and Kristen. I'm so excited to be here. So my name is Joanna Craig, and I'm the Director of Private Sector Recruiting at the University of Pennsylvania's Law School. But as Sarah and Kristen mentioned, my first job in the Philadelphia area was at Eastern University, and you all have an amazing career development team. So I'm so excited to have this conversation with you, and I just encourage you afterwards, you should feel free to reach out to me. I'll give you my contact info, but also take advantage of Sarah and Kristen because you have really, really amazing resources in them. So I hope that you're meeting with them, staying in touch with them, and attending all their other programs because they are awesome. All right. Hi, Eric, by the way. So I put together a little PowerPoint just to guide the conversation, but there's a nice small group, so please feel free to ask questions throughout. You can really just go ahead and unmute yourself and just call out. It's kind of tricky on Zoom for me to see if you raise your hand, so I think we're an intimate enough group that you should feel free to just unmute yourself and let me know if you have a question. All right. So this evening, we're going to cover salary negotiation, accepting and declining job offers, some best practices for your first month on the job, how to find your way in workplace culture, and then any other questions that you might have. So first step is, yay, you got the job, right? Awesome. This is where we hope that all of you will be, at some point coming up this spring. The first thing you want to do is you want to respond right away with enthusiasm and gratitude. You don't need to accept or decline right away, but you want to respond, say, thank you for the opportunity. I'm so excited. I enjoyed the people that I met with. Make sure that you're communicating promptly with employers. Now, some employers will actually give you a deadline for when to respond to their offer, but if they haven't, it's okay to ask them. This is a big decision you'll be making, so you can say, thank you, I'd like some time to think about this. When would you like me to get back to you? So ask that question if they don't give you a date. And then when you get the offer, that's typically when you're going to get the salary that's offered to you and any benefits information. It can seem kind of strange that you go through the whole interview process for some jobs and you have no idea what the salary is, and that just comes at the end. But that is pretty typical. So you often get the offer with the salary and benefits information. For some employers, that could be found on their website or that will come separately. So if it doesn't come in the initial offer from maybe your supervisor or whoever's giving you a call, just make sure to ask about where you can find that additional information. And when I'm talking about benefits, I mean paid time off, health insurance, retirement plans. Some employers may offer tuition assistance for graduate school. So you want all that full information before you're making a decision to accept or decline an offer. So salary negotiation, this is often an intimidating subject, right? But the reality is if you don't ask, you won't receive, right? So you're offered a salary for a job, the first thing you can do is say, is there any wiggle room with this salary? Can we discuss the salary? So just ask the question, and really it's all in your tone. You're just asking. If they say no, well, then you have your answer. But if they say yes, you want to be prepared to have that conversation. So the first thing you want to do is do your research, because any request for a higher salary needs to be backed by data. Because I can ask anyone here, who would like to earn more money? Everyone, right? We'd all just like to earn more money. So that's not a good enough reason to ask for a higher salary. You want to show the employer that the salary that you're requesting matches the salary for that particular job title, with your amount of experience, and in your city or geographical area where you'll be working. So some great places to find that information are payscale.com, salary.com, glassdoor.com. I really like payscale.com because you can go through a full questionnaire where it will ask you a whole bunch of questions about your intended employer, and it will give you a scale of what the average salary would be for that type of employer, what would be on the low end or what would be on the high end. And that's the kind of information that you want to provide to the employer if you're asking for a higher salary, right? So typically let's say, social media manager in the Philadelphia area would make around $51,000 on average. So your offer of $44,000 is not really in line with what other employers are paying. Would you be able to come closer to that average amount, right? So it's similar if you watch HGTV at all and you see people bidding on a house, right? They want to bring comps, right? What have other houses sold similar to this house? Or if you're buying a used car, right? You'll bring the Blue Book value and say, well, the Blue Book says that a car of this age with this amount of miles would be worth this. So you need some sort of information that's going to back up that request. So I would encourage you to do that research before you get that offer. Because when an employer says, here's the salary we're offering you, and you say, is there any wiggle room? They might ask you, well, what are you looking for? And so you want to know at that point, what are you looking for, right? What is that average salary in that geographical region for that job that you're looking at? The other thing to keep in mind is that it's not just salary that could be negotiable. Sometimes benefits are also negotiable. So vacation time might be negotiable. Sick time, your retirement plan. There might be some wiggle room in some of these other areas. So maybe even work from home, right? Like that's a big thing that's coming up now with a lot of us working from home. Maybe that's something you can negotiate with an employer. Maybe they can't meet your salary request, but you can work 2 days from home. So be flexible in thinking about what parts of this total package you might be able to negotiate. The other thing to keep in mind is be prepared that if an employer says, no, none of this is negotiable, this is firm, then you're just at a position where you've got to make a decision. Is this a salary that can meet your needs? Are these benefits that could meet your needs? Maybe not in the long term, but for right now, right? So you have to be prepared that it could be nope, none of this is negotiable, in which case you'll just have to make a decision, which kind of brings us to our next slide, accepting or declining an offer. So best practice when you're either accepting or declining an offer is to give a phone call to the person that gave you that offer. You want to be really gracious. You want to thank them. You want to be very professional. And then I would follow up by email, right? It's always good to have it in writing afterwards, confirming what your decision was. And you want to do it as soon as you decide. Don't leave an employer hanging on. One of the things is that employer, if you're not taking that spot, they're going to want to give it to another person, right? So there's somebody out there who's like waiting, hoping to hear from that employer. So it's just a courteous thing to do that if you're declining an offer, you just go ahead and decline it as soon as you decide. And of course, if you've accepted that offer, you're going to want to do that as soon as you decide as well. And one of the things to keep in mind is even if you are declining an offer, you never know when you might run into those people again, right? So that recruiter, that employer, maybe you will want to work there in the future in a different role. Or maybe that person will shift organizations and all of a sudden you're both at the same organization. So even if you feel like the salary offered was just not at all what you needed, or something happened in the interview process where you thought this just isn't the right fit for me, that's okay. But you always want to be super professional in all of your interactions, just keeping in mind that it is a small world and you don't know when you might come across those people in the future. Okay, so let's say you successfully negotiated the salary, it works for you, you're great, you're excited, your benefits look good, you've accepted your offer, and now it's the first month on the job. So what should you do to make the most of it? My first piece of advice is go through your job description to make sure that you understand what's expected of you, right? So when you applied for the job, you often have this whole list of things that employer is looking for you. Make sure that you go through that and you understand what you're going to be doing in that position. Are there parts that you're concerned about? Do you need some additional support to accomplish some of those tasks? Ask yourself those questions even before you walk through the door on that first day so that you can have that conversation with your supervisor, so that you can make sure that if there's a skill set that you need to develop, that you're ready to start doing that. If you don't understand a part of your job description, you want to ask those questions early on. So go through your job description, make sure you know what it is you're signing yourself up for. And then set some developmental goals for yourself in collaboration with your supervisor. So you're going to have your work goals, what's expected of you, but you should also set some goals just for your own professional development. Are there certain things that you want to work on? Do you want to become a better writer? Do you want to become a better public speaker? Do you want to learn more about Excel? What are the skills that you're hoping to gain as you move along on your professional career? You should think about those things and share those with your supervisor, because your supervisor can help you to find opportunities to work on these skills, or may be able to teach you some of these things if they know that it's something you particularly want to work on. Ask questions. I cannot say that enough. Ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. That is the biggest mistake that most people make in their first job, is they're afraid to ask questions. Oftentimes people who have been in a role or in an organization for a long time, they don't even realize the things that aren't common knowledge to other people who haven't been a part of that organization or haven't been in that industry for a certain amount of time. Nobody expects you to come to your first job knowing everything. Not at all. So they want you to ask questions. So if you find yourself confused, if you get stuck in a project and you're not sure what the next step is, if somebody uses an acronym that you're not familiar with, I'm going through this in my new job that I just started in October. There's a ton of acronyms and people just throw them out here and there. And I'm like, excuse me, what is DAR? What is TPIC? And they're like, oh, I forgot that you're new and you don't know this. It's not that they expected me to know it. They just forgot. So you really do have to ask those questions. Nobody's going to think that you should know that. Nobody's going to think less of you. In fact, they'll think more of you if you're stopping to ask those questions. The other thing is you're going to make mistakes. That's just the reality of life, especially on your first job. Mistakes will be made. They happen. Hopefully not a lot, but they will sometimes. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you take accountability and be a part of the solution and then learn from those mistakes, right? So you don't want to be making the same mistake over and over again. That's a big thing you don't want to do, but you will make some sort of mistake. The important thing is to own it, go to your supervisor, but before you go to your supervisor, think about how can we fix this? So don't just bring the problem to your supervisor, also bring the solution, right? So I made this mistake, but here's a couple ways that I thought that we might be able to solve that. Again, everyone knows that mistakes will happen. If you have a good supervisor, they're not going to be mad at you. they're just going to see it as a developmental opportunity, especially if you're taking accountability and you're helping to fix it. And then again, making sure that it doesn't happen again, right? So my other advice is getting to know your coworkers. So both the coworkers that you work directly with and then others around your organization as well. And this is something, some of you may be starting your first job remotely, right? There might be a lot of virtual time, and that can be tough. But this is not something that you should let slip. So it just takes a little bit more effort, right? So virtual check-ins, making time for a virtual coffee or lunch with your coworkers. When you are virtual, you miss those little opportunities of passing each other in the hallway, or you just happen to be grabbing coffee at the same time and then you chat. So you have to be really intentional about scheduling that time and reaching out to your new coworkers to say, introduce yourself, say, I just started, and I'd love if we could speak on Zoom or Microsoft Teams or Blue Jeans or whatever platform it is that your employer uses. Can we just chat for 15 minutes? And when I say get to know your coworkers, don't just talk about work, right? So it's important to know how that person interacts with you in the workplace. That should be part of the conversation. When will we work together? How can I help you do your job better? What information would be helpful to get from me? But also, who are they as people, right? Don't forget to do that. And it can be tough when we're just, Zoom in and out of meetings and then just on to the next thing. But ask them about their lives. Where are they from? What's their, family situation? What do they do for fun? Getting to know your coworkers can be really helpful in case, this happens. There are stressful times that come up at work. And if you've got that really good, strong connection with both people in your direct department and then other places in the organization, that can be really helpful. And it's hard to build that just when you need it. So be thinking about building those relationships over time. Communicating, just communicate, err on the side of being overly communicative. So share your perspective. One of the nice things about new people coming into the workplace is they bring a fresh perspective to things. Some organizations might be doing the same thing the same way for many, many years. And it can be helpful to have a fresh set of eyes to say, well, why are you doing it this way? Could we try it this way this time? Or I have this new idea. Can we put this project into place? Or can we talk to these people that we've never spoken to before? Whatever it might be. Sometimes people who are new to the job think, gosh, it must be wrong. That must be why they're not doing it. But maybe they just haven't thought about it. Maybe they've just been kind of continuing the way that they always were, and they didn't think that there could be another way to do it. So, of course, you want to be respectful. You don't ever want to say, that's a dumb way to do that. Why don't we do it this way, right? But you can ask questions. You can share, hey, I had this idea. Maybe we can do this. You should also ask for feedback. So hopefully your employers will have some system of formal feedback in place where you might develop goals and have annual reviews. But that's not enough feedback for you to do a really good job. So you should ask your supervisor if they don't provide it, how was my work on that project? Do you have any feedback for how I might improve that? Or how was that report that I wrote? Is there anything I could do to make it clearer? Ask for the feedback, and then you have to be receptive to it too, which is really tough. It is hard to get constructive criticism, but the more you do it, the better you're going to get. So sometimes you just got to swallow it, take that feedback, sit on it for a little while, and just try to improve. And remembering that you're fresh to this industry, you're fresh to this job, and that's how you're going to improve, is to continually work on your skills, and getting that feedback from your supervisors or your coworkers is integral to that. So just err on the side of being communicative, especially in this virtual world. I think that you've got to really reach out and talk to your coworkers, talk to your supervisor every day, make yourself known to to really become part of the culture of that office, which is what we're going to talk about next, right? So finding your way in the workplace culture. So my first advice, right, is watch, listen, and ask. So you want to watch what your other coworkers do and what your supervisor does. Listen to how they speak to one another. Listen to how they address certain situations, and then just ask questions too, right? So if you're unclear what the dress code is for your office, ask your supervisor. You know, is this more business casual? Is it more on the business side or the casual side? What do you think would be appropriate to wear to this particular event? Should I have any suits in my wardrobe? Is that something that I will need, maybe when meeting with a client or attending some special conference or something like that? Ask those questions. Take a look at what other people are wearing, take a look at how other people are speaking, but then also ask. And then be authentic and share parts of yourself, right? So in some ways you want to assimilate to your workplace culture, but you also don't want to lose all of yourself, and your employer hired you for a reason, right? You brought something to that office that that employer was looking for. So be yourself. Share. You know, you are now a part of that workplace culture, so you can bring your own ideas, and maybe you'll even start a tradition at that workplace, or something that you have brought to the table will become part of that culture. So you're watching, you're listening, you're asking, you're assimilating to what's going on there, but you're also bringing some of your own experiences, some of your own culture, some of your own life there as well. And then setting up these coffee chats, lunches to develop meaningful relationships. And ideally, you want to find a mentor or mentors who you can trust to be open and honest with you. So a mentor can be somebody who, you know, it could be your supervisor. Your supervisor could be your mentor, or it could be somebody else in the organization who can share with you what's going on in the organization that might not be said openly, right? That can share with you some tips about the culture that might not be so obvious, who can give you advice for maybe what those developmental goals I mentioned before should be. You want to find those people who you can just trust to talk to, people who are further along in their career than you are, who have great wisdom to share with you. And so the best way to do that is to just set up these coffee chats and lunches and just introduce yourself to people, because you can't always pick out exactly who's going to be the best mentor for you or who you're going to connect with really well. But if you put yourself out there, you'll see that you will develop some of these really meaningful relationships. And these mentors can be people that you keep with you, not just in that first job, but as you move along your career as well. These people can continue to be your mentors. So that's something that I would encourage you all to do as well, is to really be on the search for who those people will be in your life. Okay, that's my little presentation just to guide our conversation. But now I want to hear what questions you all have.
Keep in mind, you can come off mic or you can use the chat. We're happy to do either one.
And if you don't want your question public to everybody, you can chat one of us privately too.
What's the biggest mistake you see new people make in the workforce right out of college? Like, what's the biggest mistake or mistakes?
So I do think that biggest mistake is not asking questions. So a lot of people will start their new job and they think, I'm supposed to know this. And so they'll tackle a project and spend hours on it, and they're doing the completely wrong thing. Like, they just completely do it the wrong way, or sometimes they just get paralyzed in that fear of, I don't know what I'm doing, and now I'm just going to sit on this and not do it. So I really think that is the biggest mistake, is recognizing that you're not meant to know everything, and really figuring out what your project's supposed to be, figuring out what you're supposed to do in certain situations.
Another question, what's the biggest thing that you see done right
I love that. That's a great question. The biggest thing that I see done right. Um, so I think the biggest thing that can be done right is when you look for ways to add value to the organization that you just entered, right? So we talked about looking at your job description, and those are the tasks that you are set to do, what you were hired to do. But there might be other areas where you can add value. Maybe something that you studied or an experience that you had. So as you're building these relationships around the organization, when you think about, well, how can my role interact better with that role? Or how can we work together on a project? So just being really forward thinking in how you can improve and make others' lives easier and create new, exciting, taking initiative, right? I think that's the best thing that you can do. So does anybody want to share where you all are in this process? Are you all seniors? Are you getting ready to go into the job search? What are your majors?
I'm a junior environmental science major with a minor in data science. I'm considering double majoring in biology though, with the environmental science major. And I'm searching for internships and REUs. Nothing's come up yet, but just trying to get as much information as I can so I can be ready.
Great.
I'm majoring in criminal justice and minoring in psychology. I'm graduating after this year. This is my last year. Right now, I'm just researching. I had a hard time finding internships. I wonder why. And I'm just looking around and researching exactly what it is I want to do. I mean, I'm looking into something like loss prevention right now, but I'm just keeping at it because there's a lot of different paths that even a lot of the interests I have can go. So keeping on top of that, just looking for anything that could potentially be an opportunity soon.
Great.
Hi, I'm actually on here. Someone gave me this information. I'm actually a childcare provider and I'm looking for employees. And they gave me this information in hopes that I may be able to meet or either give my information to someone if they were looking for an internship or either employment full or part-time or childcare.
Well, great. I'm sure that Sarah or Kristen will want to be in touch with you after this to maybe put a job posting in the job bank.
That would be great.
Yeah, definitely. T, if you can put your, if you can like chat at Kristen or I privately with your contact information, that would be great.
Okay, thank you.
Michael or Caitlin, do you want to, not to put you on the spot, but do you want to share?
Hi, I can share.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm at my other job, my night job. But hi,
No worries.
Caitlin Bell. I am a senior sports medicine athletic training major, and I am going to be graduating in May. So I'm looking for jobs in the sales and marketing aspects because eventually I do want to go into medical equipment sales.
Great. I love the multitasking. Good for you. So it sounds like a lot of you are in the looking for the job or looking for the internship part of the process. And that's been really tricky with the pandemic, right? There's not, job fairs are different and maybe even some institutions are not, doing internships the way that they typically would. So that can be tricky. So I know my advice for that is not to rely just on job postings, to really be digging into networking. And I'm sure you've heard about networking and you're probably like, enough with the networking. But really talking to people and meeting new people is really the best way to find your new job. Most people do get jobs not from like a job posting through an online website, although you should be on Handshake and you should be looking at all those job postings, but it's through having those conversations. So I would get on LinkedIn if you haven't already, update your profile, and then just start reaching out to people. They could be alumni of Eastern, or they don't have to be, though. It can just be somebody who's in the field that you think is interesting, who has a career that you want to learn more about. And you can just reach out to them and say, you know, I'm a current college student. I'm looking for an internship, or I'm looking for a full-time role, and I'd love to chat with you. So I definitely encourage you to do that. Michael, you have a question?
Yeah, so I've been getting messages on Handshake, which is good, but I just have like one like crucial question. So how can I tell if a job offer is legit or if it's a scam?
That is a great question. Yeah. So, first thing I'll say, Sarah and Kristen are excellent resources for that, right? So there are some scammers who are kind of frequent scammers. So I would run it by Sarah and Kristen because they might recognize that person. Another great resource for you is glassdoor.com. Glassdoor.com is a way to look up employers, and there are reviews on there. You can see the people will review the interview process. They'll review what it's like working for there. You might find some warnings on glassdoor.com. So that would be a good place to start. The other thing to do would be to ask them about their business practices. There are some employers that will be more of like a pyramid scheme, right? Like if they're not paying you a salary, that's something to be concerned about. If it's a purely commission-based job, that should send up a red flag. If they don't have an actual office location that they can share with you, that's a big red flag. If they don't have a website, nowadays that can be a red flag. So you want to, if any employer is sending up some of these red flags, you want to be cautious and ask some additional questions. Certainly you don't want to be going any place by yourself if you have any of these concerns. And I would definitely reach out to Sarah and Kristen because if you found that employer on Handshake, they do not want, you know, a scam employer posting on Handshake anymore, and they would rely on that information to know not to have that person post anymore. But you want to ask those questions and get a lot of information. Also, no employer who's a legitimate employer is going to ask you to pay for anything. So sometimes scammers will do that. They'll say, well, to get started, you need to purchase X, Y, and Z. Nope, absolutely not. You get a job so that they pay you. So if they're not providing a salary, or if they're asking you to pay for something or provide a credit card information, anything like that, that should be a huge red flag that that's not a legitimate job offer.
Thank you for the information.
Absolutely.
We had a couple of questions in the chat. One was about advice that you would give on how to identify a mentor. So I know that you mentioned like having the coffee chats and things, but like how do you get that like gut level feeling like, ooh, this is a person I could trust?
That is a great question. So it's important to kind of build that relationship over time. It's not like one coffee chat and you're like, will you be my mentor, right? It's not like, will you be my boyfriend? Will you be my girlfriend? It's really something that builds over time. So what I would do is you have a coffee chat and then ask them some questions, right? What do you think I can do to improve my resume moving forward? Or what would be your tips for me if I'm thinking about going into, you know, this other field? Start to ask those developmental questions and see if that person has good advice, right? Because that's what makes a mentor is they give you good advice. So if that person is willing to have those conversations with you, that's a pretty good indicator that that person is a good mentor. And if their advice is making sense to you and it matches your values and it matches your goals, then that's somebody that can be a mentor for you. And keeping in mind, you don't need one mentor, right? So you're not looking for somebody who's going to meet all of these needs, but you're looking for somebody who can be a sounding board. You're looking for somebody who, when you get a new job offer, you would call them and say, I think I might take this new job. Does this sound like it's a good fit for me, right? So I would say start don't put a lot of pressure on these relationships. Don't go into the coffee chat like I need to find my mentor today. Just go in getting to know that person and wanting to make a genuine connection with someone, and then just bring the conversation there. And if that person is willing to move forward and have those conversations with you, then that's somebody who's going to be a good mentor for you.
We have another question too. It was, how do you network when you're doing school 100% online? So for some of our students that are a little bit isolated perhaps from the campus experience, or after you graduate when you're not there anymore, what does that look like? What are some good tips you could give on that?
Yeah. So everybody has gotten super comfortable being online now. We were just kind of chatting about this before the program began. If you had asked me this question, last January, I'd be like, oh, there's no way I'm going to talk to somebody on Zoom randomly. Like, that's never happening. But nowadays, we're so used to that. So many people are working remotely that it's not a big deal to say, can we Zoom or even just talk on the phone, right? We've become more accustomed to doing this networking remotely. The other thing is that there are lots of organizations that are still having virtual events. So whatever your industry is, I would encourage you to join some of these trade associations, join some of these associations for your industry, and then see what virtual events they're having. So there could be a virtual panel, and you could attend that, and then you could reach out to one of those panelists later and say, I really enjoyed hearing you speak on this environmental science issue. I'd love to chat with you more about your career path. So while there's not a lot of in-person handshaking going on, it is still being done virtually. And so you've just got to shift like the world has shifted. And LinkedIn is such an amazing resource for you. You can run searches on Eastern alumni, what they studied, see where they are. And I feel like while you all completely remote might feel isolated, some of these alumni are isolated too, right? So hey, maybe I'm sick of all the people that live in my house and I'd love to chat with someone new for 15 minutes. So don't be afraid to reach out. Just because you can't have an actual coffee with them doesn't mean that you can't talk with them. So people are much more comfortable with that. I would just go ahead and reach out. You don't have to be in person.
One thing to the networking question also is that obviously industries differ, but some of the industries that I follow closely are really into Twitter. So following influencers that I adore, so like writers or thinkers or speakers, that's often a way that I have. And what's wild today is the access point for even people who are big speakers and thinkers in your field. They might actually, if you tweet at them, they might tweet back. So it is kind of wild how that can be another way. So depending on your flavor, obviously different industries prefer different social media platforms, but that can actually be a legitimate way to stay on top of what's going on in your chosen industry, as well as build connections.
You might want to start to get active on LinkedIn too. Now, LinkedIn's got this news feed that looks very much like Facebook now, and you'll see a lot of people will post articles or interesting topics of discussion I would encourage you to jump into that. That's like one of my goals is like, I need to get more active on LinkedIn. So I'm going to give you that as a goal too. You know, if you find an article that's really relevant to your industry, maybe post that on LinkedIn with, you know, some thoughts about it and start a conversation. That could be a great way to draw some individuals from your industry in and to showcase some of the things you know about your industry as well. So think about ways that you can not just look at your profile, but just look at your activity level on LinkedIn. I would also say the part about networking that sometimes people forget too is you already have a network. So talk to your professors, talk to your friends and family, talk to church members, talk to your high school friends. You know, anybody could potentially be part of your network. So maintain some of those relationships too. Don't be afraid to email your professor and let them know you're looking for an internship, and maybe they have somebody that they could put you in contact with. Has anybody done a virtual interview yet? Yeah. So that's another piece to think about, is heading into this search process. Once you get your interview, it'll likely be virtual. So you want to really be thoughtful about preparing for your interviews, maybe a little bit differently, making sure that you've got access to really good, strong internet connections, good lighting, space that's not cluttered, that's neat for your background. Some of these things are a little bit different that you need to think about as well. Because most employers right now, I think, are doing the virtual interviewing. So just to kind of be thoughtful about that as well.
This is actually something that we have a resource you can use to practice. There's a website, Sarah, do you mind putting it in the chat for everybody, called Standout that we have partnered with starting this year that gives you the chance to practice answering interview questions, and it'll automatically record you so you can watch yourself back and see what you looked like in that setting, what your background was like, what your posture, if you stumbled over anything. It's a really great resource that you can check out. And you can either keep it private to yourself, or you can also submit your practice to Sarah or I to give you feedback as well.
That's awesome. I would definitely encourage you all to take advantage of that. You'd rather make mistakes and have Sarah and Kristen watch it than make the mistakes in the actual interview. So that's an awesome resource.
It also saves you from having to do awkward practices with like family members or roommates, which is kind of nice too. Yeah, there's the software. There's a 2-minute video on our YouTube channel. I'll pop the link for our YouTube channel in the chat as well. So if you have any questions, it's a 2-minute startup. It's really easy to do. You just log in with your Eastern info and you'll be able to access Standout.
Other questions? I think one of the most important pieces going into your first job is remembering that everyone is on your side, right? Everyone wants it to go well. And so everybody in your organization can be a resource for you. I think that can be helpful to remember that sometimes when you're nervous going in, you pull in, and you want to do the opposite, right? You want to reach out. So that's something to keep in mind, that they hired you for a reason, right? So when you get there, you want to make sure that you are really using all the resources that that employer has and really connecting with people there.
All right. Well, it looks like we've gotten through the questions from the chat, so I think we're at a good spot. I want to thank Joanna so much for joining us tonight, and we're so grateful for her enthusiasm and her warm energy and her advice. You know, these are the kinds of conversations that I wish every single student could be in on. But luckily, we have a recording, so we'll be able to share this with others who weren't able to join us tonight. So thank you so much for your time, Joanna. To all of you who joined us in the audience, we are super grateful for you too. Hope that you got some good knowledge, and please do not hesitate to reach out. I'm going to throw our email into the chat as well. If you are looking to have a longer conversation about your specific situation, do not hesitate. We'd be more than happy to do a one-on-one conversation with you and help you figure out your big questions. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.